I wasn't shocked when my parents cut me off. I just didn't think it would happen so early, or so coldly. No screaming. No dramatic scene. Just a message sent 2 weeks after my 18th birthday. From this point on, you'll need to cover your expenses. We've done our part. That was it. No context. No follow-up. I stared at it for hours, trying to convince myself I'd misread it. That maybe it was phrased poorly. That maybe my dad had hit send before finishing his thought. But when I asked, he doubled down. You're legally an adult. You're on your own now. That's how the world works. And my mom? She didn't say anything. She just looked at me like I should have seen this coming. Looking back, maybe I should have. Because I wasn't the golden child. That was my younger sister, Callie. Callie, the miracle baby. Callie, the cheerleader. Callie, who could crash her car 3 times in a year and still get a new one handed over with a bow. Me? I was the quiet one. The planner. The one who never asked for more than I was given, and somehow got less anyway. I got into college on my merit. Decent school. Partial scholarship. The rest was supposed to be covered by a college fund my grandparents had set up years ago, money that was supposed to be split evenly between me and Callie. Except, when I went to access it, I found out it had been drained. Not empty. Drained. Used for unexpected home expenses, according to my mom. When I pushed for more details, she said, "We had to make a judgment call. You seemed like you'd manage." Callie's half? Still untouched. She was 2 years younger. Still in high school. Her future was worth protecting. Mine? A learning opportunity. So I did what I always did. I figured it out. Took on 2 jobs. Crammed my schedule into a chaotic routine. Learned how to stretch grocery money into 5 meals and live without heat for half the winter. No one offered help. No one checked in. Not even when I got pneumonia my second year and had to drop 2 classes just to afford antibiotics. I graduated late. But I graduated. And I didn't invite them to the ceremony. When my mom found out, she sent one text. "You're being dramatic." I didn't reply. Because I'd already spent 4 years proving I didn't need them. I wasn't going to spend another explaining why. I got a job in tech. Small company, big potential. Worked like hell. Built my way up, and eventually bought my first house at 27. Callie, meanwhile, had become a freelance lifestyle coach, which meant a curated Instagram account and monthly calls asking my parents for rent money. And they gave it. Every time. I stayed out of it. I never rubbed my success in their faces. Never brought up the past. Never asked why she was still the favorite. But then they called. Not to apologize. Not to catch up. To ask for money. Callie had racked up $40,000 in credit card debt. Private loans. Travel expenses. A wellness course she never finished, but still owed tuition on. And now she was facing legal trouble. "We thought maybe you could help," my mom said. "Help how?" "Cover the debt. Just to get her stable again." I laughed. "You cut me off at 18 with a text. What makes you think I'd bankroll her mess now?" My dad said. "Because you can. And family helps family," I said. "So where was family when I was living on instant noodles and working graveyard shifts?" They didn't have an answer. But they had nerve. Because what they did next? It wasn't a guilt trip. It was a threat. A week after I turned them down, I got a letter. Registered mail. Thick envelope. No return address, but I already knew where it came from. Inside, a letter from their attorney. My parents were suing me. I read it 3 times, thinking there had to be a mistake. They claimed I had made a verbal agreement to provide financial support for my sister in exchange for access to the family trust. Except I'd never agreed to anything. There was no family trust. No deal. No negotiation. There was only one truth. They cut me off. Now they were mad I hadn't come crawling back with a checkbook. I called the number listed on the paperwork. Spoke to their lawyer. "Is this serious?" "They've filed the motion, yes." "Do they think this is going to work?" A pause. "I can't speak to their motivations." Translation: even he knew it was a stretch. I got my attorney. Showed her the letter. Explained everything. She blinked. They cut you off at 18? Yeah. Never helped with college? Nope. And now they want money? From the kid they abandoned, yes. She closed the folder and said, Let's have some fun. Legally, they didn't have a leg to stand on. No written agreement. No trust paperwork naming me responsible. No evidence that I'd ever offered anything other than a hard no. But that didn't mean it wouldn't cost me time, energy, money. Family or not, lawsuits are weapons. And they were wielding this one like a warning shot. The worst part wasn't the paperwork. It was the fallout. Marissa, an old cousin I'd stayed in touch with, called me crying. They told the whole family you betrayed them. They what? They said you promised to take care of Callie and then backed out. That you're greedy. That you're letting her drown. I almost laughed. They let me drown. She's just finally learning to swim. Word got around fast. Relatives stopped replying to messages. Aunts who used to send me holiday cards went quiet. Uncles who never knew how to spell software engineer were suddenly financial ethics experts. And Callie? She texted once. I can't believe you'd do this to me. You know I'm not built for this stuff. No apology. No ownership. Just another way to say, you were supposed to carry this. I didn't respond. Because I'd carried enough. The court was scheduled for the following month. My lawyer prepped me for everything. How to present calmly. How to reference old emails. How to use their own silence as evidence. It felt surreal. Standing in front of a system designed to weigh facts, trying to prove that your own parents were lying to discredit you. But here's what happened. The case fell apart fast. The judge asked for documentation of the alleged verbal agreement. There was none. The trust? Non-existent. The clause tying my finances to Callie's? Pure fiction. After 2 hearings, the case was dismissed. On record in writing. Just like that. My lawyer asked if I wanted to countersue for damages, court fees, and emotional distress. I said no. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because I didn't want another minute of my life tied to people who would use lawyers before language. A week after the dismissal, I got a voicemail from my mother. Tight voice. No warmth. You could have ended this quietly. You didn't have to humiliate us. Then my father separately. You've made your point. But you've burned this bridge. As if there was a bridge left. As if they hadn't torched it years ago, the moment they decided I was only worth keeping around if I was useful. I sat in my car after listening to both. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just exhaled. Because for once, I wasn't defending myself. I had proof. And they had silence. After the lawsuit was dismissed, I thought that was it. Clean break. I wasn't speaking to them. They weren't speaking to me. And the rest of the family had picked sides, most of them not mine. I thought I'd feel bitter. But honestly, I felt lighter. Until I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My grandfather's former accountant. He'd heard about the court case through some community grapevine. Said he wanted to talk. I met him at a diner just off the highway. He was in his 70s now, slower, quieter, but sharp as ever. He didn't waste time. I handled your grandfather's finances until he passed. You remember the college fund? Yeah. I was told it was used for house repairs. That's not what happened. He pulled out a file. Old paper. Yellowed edges. Copies of statements from a trust fund account. Your grandfather set up equal funds for both you and your sister. He made it very clear in writing, a 50-50 split. No early withdrawals without approval. I stared at the page. The numbers were there. So was the signature. And then I saw it. A transfer. My portion, moved into a general checking account 3 months before I turned 18. No approval. No notification. No emergency cited. They told me the trust was never funded. I said quietly. They lied. It hit me like a second betrayal. Because the lawsuit was one thing. But this was premeditated. They hadn't just cut me off. They'd taken what was mine, something set aside by a man who believed in fairness, and quietly folded it into their own lives. A roof repair here, A vacation there. Maybe one of Callie's new projects. I left the diner with a copy of the file. Got in my car. Didn't start it. Just sat there, staring at the paper like it might change if I looked long enough. But it didn't. Because the truth doesn't soften. It just settles. I went home. Pulled out old emails. Voicemails. Screenshots. And I made a timeline. When the fund was established. When the transfer happened. When I asked for help, and was told there was nothing left. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of what they'd done, not just the legal mess, not just the public shaming. They'd stolen my chance to start adulthood on equal footing. And then, years later, they tried to shame me for building without them. I sent the file to my lawyer. Not because I wanted more court dates. Because I wanted it documented. I wanted someone else, someone official to see what they tried to bury. She read through it and called me an hour later. This isn't just unethical. It might be criminal. I'm not pressing charges. I said. I just want it on record. You sure? Yeah. I'm not here for revenge. Pause. You're handling this better than most people would. I've had practice. In the weeks that followed, I got one more message from Callie. A voice memo this time. Tired. Flat. I found out about the fund. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't ask you to. I replied. But I hope you sit with it. I didn't send her the documents. I didn't want to argue over who knew what and when. Because the truth was already heavy enough, and I wasn't carrying it for them anymore. One night, I stood in my kitchen with the lights off. Window open. Cold air spilling in. And I realized something. For years, I thought I'd been forgotten. But I hadn't. I was calculated out. Excluded on purpose. And they were hoping I'd be too tired to ever add it up. But I did. There's a strange pressure when your family betrays you quietly. You're expected to keep it quiet too. To protect reputations. To be the bigger person. To swallow the truth in the name of peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's performance. So I decided to stop performing. I didn't go nuclear. I didn't blast anyone on social media or post screenshots of private texts. Instead, I wrote an open letter. To my extended family. My community. The people who'd been fed a version of the story where I was the villain. It wasn't angry. It was factual. I told them everything. How I was cut off at 18 without warning. How the college fund meant for me was secretly absorbed and never returned. How my parents later tried to sue me when I wouldn't cover my sister's reckless debt. How they told the family I abandoned them. When the truth was, they had shut the door years before I ever walked away. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth, with receipts. I ended it like this. I'm not sharing this to gain sympathy. I don't need that. I'm sharing it because silence allows harm to survive. And I won't be complicit in my own erasure anymore. I sent it privately. One by one. Not mass-forwarded. Not dramatic. Just direct. Unavoidable. Some relatives never replied. Others reached out quietly, cautiously. One aunt wrote, "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We only heard what they told us." Another cousin messaged, "I always wondered why you disappeared. I wish I'd asked sooner." I didn't blame them. Because that's how it works, doesn't it? The people who shout the loudest get to write the script, unless someone interrupts. And I finally had. I got a call from Marissa a few days later. Not angry. Tired. They're furious, you know. They've been furious since I said no. Now they say you're airing dirty laundry. It's not laundry if I never got the chance to wash it. She exhaled. You did the right thing. Even Callie texted again. This time, no demands. Just, I read it. It hurt. But it's true. I stared at the message for a long time. Typed a response. Deleted it. Because this wasn't about making her feel better. This was about making myself visible again. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't chasing an apology or hoping for some last-minute redemption arc. I just wanted to live without carrying the weight of their lie. And now I was. I went to a friend's birthday party that weekend. First time in months I'd been in a crowded room without thinking about what people knew, or didn't. Someone I hadn't seen since college came up to me. "Hey, I read your letter. I didn't know all that. You've done well for yourself." I smiled. Because yeah, I had. Not despite everything. Because of everything. They cut me off and said I'd fail. They lied and said I was ungrateful. They erased me and expected I'd stay invisible. But I didn't. I built a life they couldn't touch. And now I was telling the story they hoped no one would hear. A month after I sent the letter, I got an email. It wasn't from my parents. Not from Callie. It was from my mother's sister, my Aunt Ray. We hadn't spoken in years. She used to be close to my mom. Holidays, birthdays, the kind of sibling relationship people envied. But at some point they drifted. I never knew why. Until I opened that message. I debated whether to reach out. But I read what you wrote, and I believe you. Because I watched it happen, in smaller ways, all my life. She didn't just confirm the details. She filled in the blanks. When I was a kid, my parents had already started showing clear favoritism toward Callie. Aunt Ray had questioned it. Gently at first. Then directly. But when she did, they shut her out too. Your mom always said you were too serious. That you didn't know how to be part of the family. Your dad said you were self-righteous. That it was better to cut you loose than deal with the criticism. I reread those lines 10 times. Because for years, I'd wondered how they justified it to themselves. Now I knew. They had rewritten me, not as the kid who kept showing up, but as a threat to their comfort. Aunt Ray ended the message like this. I wish I'd said something sooner. I saw you working 2 jobs in college and thought he must have chosen this. Maybe he wants space. I see now, they made sure that's what everyone thought. I'm sorry. For being quiet. For not asking more. I replied simply. Thank you for seeing it now. And I meant it. Because sometimes, one person breaking the silence is enough to shift the entire weight of the past. That message cracked something open. Not pain. Relief. Because it proved I hadn't imagined it. The coldness. The distance. The exclusion. It wasn't hypersensitivity. It was a strategy. And now someone had witnessed it, out loud. A week later, a package arrived at my office. No return name. Just a P.O. box. Inside, a box of old photos. Family albums. Loose prints from birthdays, vacations, and school plays. Tucked between them was a note, in shaky handwriting. My father's. I found these cleaning out the garage. Figured they'd mean more to you than they do to us. No hard feelings. That was it. No apology. No admission. Just a box full of proof that I was once part of something they now claimed I'd walked away from. I looked through the pictures slowly. There I was, age 7, building a sandcastle. 13, holding a science fair ribbon. 17, sitting at a table alone while Callie opened gifts at her sweet 16. I studied my face in each one, trying to remember what that version of me thought family meant. And how long it took to realize it wasn't what I'd been taught. I kept a few photos. Framed one for my hallway, not out of sentiment, but as a marker. A reminder that I didn't vanish. That I was there. That I mattered. The rest? I boxed them up and donated them. Because I didn't need proof of who I used to be. I had finally become who they were afraid I might. Someone they couldn't control with guilt. Someone who told the truth, and stood by it. Time has a way of softening the edges of anger. But it doesn't blur the facts. You learn to stop needing apologies from people who think silence is just as good. You stop waiting for them to wake up and realize what they did. You build your life, and eventually, you stop looking over your shoulder. That's where I was. A few years had passed. I'd moved again, a bigger place, more light, a neighborhood with old trees and quiet dogs. Work was steady. Friendships were real. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was choosing. One afternoon, I came home to a thick envelope in my mailbox. My name. My full name. No return address. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My mother's. Inside, a handwritten letter. 7 pages. Careful cursive. No mess, no emotion spilling out. It was deliberate. She didn't apologize, not directly. But she acknowledged more than I thought she ever would. I realize now that we confused independence with disrespect. That your strength made us feel unnecessary. That we taught you to be self-reliant, then resented you for it. We didn't know how to love you unless you needed us. And when you didn't, we took it personally. She talked about the fund. Said they used it. Out of fear. Afraid of losing the house, afraid of falling behind. But she admitted they never told me because they knew it would hurt. She didn't say they were wrong. But she said, we were cowards. She mentioned the lawsuit too. Said she wished it had never happened. Blamed my father. Then herself. Then, everything that built up over the years. The last line read, if you ever decide you want to come home, the door's open. I folded the letter. Set it on the counter. And just stood there for a while. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. Because I realized something in that moment. I didn't need the door to be open. Because I'd already built my own house. I didn't write back. Not to punish. Just to preserve peace. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean re-entry. Sometimes it just means release. I showed the letter to no one. Didn't ask for advice. Didn't post about it. Didn't analyze every sentence. I read it once more. Then tucked it into a drawer I rarely open. Weeks later, I threw a dinner party. Just a few close friends. No pressure, no performance. We cooked together, spilled wine on the floor, argued about movies, and laughed until the candles burned low. Someone offered to clear the dishes. I said, you're not a guest. You're home. And I meant it. Because that table, that moment, felt like something I'd wanted my entire life. And I had built it myself. They once told me that family helps family. What they meant was, you help us. We take what we want. But now, family means something else. It means people who see you. Who chose you. Who never makes you prove your pain to earn a seat. Years later, someone asked me if I regretted cutting them off. It was at a wedding, a friend's cousin, a little tipsy, talking about how hard it must be to not talk to your family. I smiled. Not the fake kind, the kind you give when you've already made peace with the answer. It wasn't hard. I said. It was necessary. They looked confused. So I didn't explain. Because by now, I've learned something important. Not everyone deserves your story. My story is this. I was raised by people who believed love was conditional, earned through obedience, performance, and sacrifice. When I stopped performing, they stopped calling. When I stopped giving, they accused me of betrayal. And when I built a life they couldn't control, they called me cold. But cold is what you become when warmth is used as a leash. And I'm not cold. I'm calm. I have a small life by some standards. A good job. A circle of people who show up when they say they will. A living room that feels like exhaling. A version of the family that requires no rehearsal. Sometimes I think about that first message they sent me, the one that ended everything before it ever really started. You'll need to cover your expenses. We've done our part. They thought they were teaching me responsibility. What they really taught me was this. Blood is not a guarantee of safety. And family is not a license to harm. Now, I help others like me, quietly, carefully. I donate to college funds for kids who don't have backup plans. I mentor students navigating systems no one prepared them for. I tell them what I wish someone had told me. You're not broken. You're just not benefiting from the story they wanted you to play. The house I live in now has 3 bedrooms. One is an office. One is empty. Not because I'm waiting for someone. But it's mine to choose. That space, that room, is a reminder of what I lost. Of what I get to keep. Callie and I never reconciled. I hear she's doing better. Different job. Different town. Less noise. I hope she's okay. Truly. Because healing doesn't require bitterness. Only boundaries. My parents? Still quiet. And that's fine. Because some stories don't need sequels. They just need endings. The last time I visited my old hometown, I drove past our house. Didn't stop. Didn't slow down. Just nodded once, like tipping your hat to a version of yourself you've long since outgrown. Because I don't need that place to remember where I came from. I carry it. Not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that I wasn't weak for walking away. Proof that I wasn't selfish for saying no. Proof that survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a quiet act of building something they said you couldn't. And now? I eat well. I sleep easily. And when I set my table, every seat is filled with someone who chose me, the way I chose myself. That's the only legacy I need.